So let's get going. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Results Grassroots Conference call for March. If it's the first time for anybody, a really warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoy the call and learn something about results campaigning that you'll find useful. My name's Naveed and I'm the head of campaigns at Results UK. So yeah, thanks for joining us on this call. And the main topic of discussion, as it was in last month, is tuberculosis, which, as many of you on the call know, is the world's deadliest infectious disease after COVID. But worse than that, it's been with humanity for centuries, and even though it's curable and treatable. Now, we're going to learn a lot more about the reality of this from our guest speaker in a few minutes' time. So first, I'm going to start off with the usual housekeeping. So firstly, as you gathered, we're recording this call, and we'll post the recording on our website for anyone who's missed it. So if you don't want to appear in the video, please just feel free to turn your video off. That's fine. Then all the links that are shared in the chat will be linked to in the recording as well, in the YouTube recording. We're trying to use automatic captions, which hopefully is working, and you can turn them on and off yourselves should you want them or not want them. Ideally, if you could keep yourself muted during the call, and if you've got any questions, please use the chat box. But if that's not working, just shout out. I'm sure that'll be fine. And then if anyone would like to introduce themselves, please just do so by unmuting and say hello, or you can just say hello in the chat function. It'd be great to hear where people are. So it's also completely okay if you don't want to and just want to listen in. Oh, here's Vicky. Hello, Vicky. So first of all, I'm going to start with the usual roundup of what's going on in the world that's relevant to our work to overcome global poverty. And the first thing I want to mention, we've heard a lot about it over the last few years, is the UK's official development assistance budget, or ODA, which is where the bulk of our financial support to lower and middle income countries comes, often referred to as overseas aid. Apologies for the explanation for those of you who are very familiar with what that all is. So just to recap, many of us know this budget was cut dramatically in 2021, but by now it's abundantly clear to everybody that the UK's reputation as a reliable partner has been massively damaged by this cut. We also heard towards the end of this last year, if you were on that particular call, I think it was October, how up to a third of the current budget, no, it was November, sorry, how up to a third of the current budget is actually been spent on supporting refugees coming to the UK in their first year here. Now that's legal under the international rules about official development assistance, but it's not something that's being done by other host nations. Now, as a result, we're extremely concerned about this for a number of reasons. Firstly, obviously, it reduces the amount of money being spent on poverty reduction overall. It's cut the budget by a further third. Secondly, we believe we should be paying for this vital support for people fleeing insecurity and danger from additional resources. And failing to do this is important because it creates an artificial either or, making false choices between supporting people around the world and supporting people coming to the UK to avoid those extreme dangers. And of course, we have a duty to do both, and we can afford to do so. Equally concerning for us, I would say, is some of the narratives that we hear around refugees, and we need to be very careful in our work as a result not to inadvertently reinforce negative stereotypes about refugees being a cost in some way or a problem, which is dehumanizing and also simply counterproductive and wrong. So we're hoping to publish a blog on this topic very soon. It's not quite ready yet, so watch out for a link to that in your inbox. If there's anyone on the call who's not yet signed up to receive our emails and would like to, we'll put a link to our homepage in the chat box. Yeah, that should just simply scroll to the bottom of that page and you can sign up there. Sorry, I've just seen a message which I need to reply to. It's done. So moving on. Last week, Parliament's International Development Committee, which is the cross-party watchdog on development issues, published a really critical report of the government's approach to this issue of refugees and describing this as a political choice. Now, we entirely agree with that. And again, in case you want to read what the MPs said, we're going to put that link in the chat box as well. So that's over to you if you want to find out a bit more about that false choice that I've just described. Now, the next thing I'd like to report on is a bit more positive, very much more positive, in fact, and it's some work by Results staff that complements your work on education, and specifically on what we were calling foundational literacy and numeracy. So essentially, that's the basic skills that form the building blocks of education and that open up more essentially social and economic possibilities for people. If you want to recap more about that, we're not going to talk about it in detail now, but you can look at information from, I think that was October. So we're going to, that link that's just gone in the chat box, thank you, Ruthie, was from that. So if you remember back and you were on that call, you'll have met a colleague of ours, a global education advocacy consultant who's called Kaleem Luthra. Now, he wrote a report on this for us last year. And following the report launch in Parliament, which was in December, the Development Minister, Andrew Mitchell, asked for an additional kind of round table discussion, they call it, because he wanted to learn more about this issue. So that report stimulated that. And this follow-up event happened last Wednesday, and we were really pleased with this. Results was the only NGO invited to observe the session, which brought together the Minister, expert presenters and senior civil servants. And they were all keen to hear about foundational literacy and numeracy in more detail, and what are the main challenges facing the UK's learning objectives on that. What is it that people should come out of schools actually knowing and learning? And this is, for me, a really powerful example of the impact we can have with staff and volunteer advocates working together to raise concern about an issue. And we're really grateful for the part that you played in this, in raising the profile of the learning crisis with the government. So thank you very much indeed if you were able to take action on that. We think it materially helped there. And hopefully this will be the basis of future success in our advocacy and help to deepen the relationship we have with decision makers on this issue. The last thing I want to talk about before we do the usual roundup of what you guys have been doing is to thank all of you who responded to our grassroots survey in January. We in the grassroots team have now had the chance to go through your feedback and to reflect on what you told us. And I want to give a really top line summary of some of the things that you said. There's a lot of things, so I can't go into detail. And also some of the ideas that come up from you to do things a little bit differently. Now, completely understandably, lots of you reported that your motivation to be involved in advocacy on international development has taken a bit of a knock in this last year or so. You know, given that the government is evidently less interested than it has been in the past about poverty reduction, less responsive to our campaigns, and less likely to put significant resources into it, absolutely entirely understandable. However, we're also hearing people saying how it remains very important to keep engaging MPs in these issues, and that process of creating long-term political pressure that will hopefully make the difference, when the current political ideas have changed a bit. Many of you reported that you feel that Results is still making some difference, and that's really reassuring to hear, but recognizing that achieving change is definitely more challenging right now. And in these circumstances, a few of you expressed interest in taking different kinds of action, as well as contacting MPs and ministers directly, which is what we suggest you do quite a lot of the time. Things like running public events in your communities or giving talks to build that kind of broader social and political support. Now, this is something we'd very much like to support you on if you're interested in doing that. So do get in touch, but it's something we're thinking about. And again, any ideas what that might look like or sharing ideas, yeah, just let us know and we'll hopefully share them with others. We also heard quite a bit of interest in having more opportunities to learn about the issues and gain advocacy skills. Now, we usually run a couple of face-to-face sessions during the year, and these are really important. And I would like to just do a shout out for our national conference, which we're just starting to plan now, slightly late, unfortunately, but we will get there. The date is yet to be confirmed, but it's likely to be in July. So for those of you who haven't come across that, do watch out for information about it. We do lots and lots of sessions with speakers and training sessions all over a 2-day period. Now, this spring and summer, what we've decided to do is also trial monthly drop-ins online, sort of similar to our autumn training, which we did, and taking up some of your suggestions around making these a bit more informal. We heard a lot about the value that people placed on working together in groups. Now, I know this isn't possible for everyone for a variety of reasons, so we're hoping to set up what we're calling a virtual group. I don't know if that's a good term for it. Probably in the next month or so, to help people who don't live geographically close to other results campaigners to share ideas and support one another. On ideas for topics of these training events, several people said they would like to learn more about how the UK political system works, which we can definitely do. And some people wanted to learn more about the phrase we've been talking about a lot in the last couple of years, anti-oppression, particularly about tackling racism. So these are all things we think we can help with this year. And once again, a massive thank you for everybody for your thoughtful and constructive ideas. I'm going to stop there for now and hand over to Aurora, who will just do the usual bit about summarising the things that have been going on around the country. So Aurora, over to you.
Thank you, Naveed, and hi everyone. So it's really nice to see you, and I just want to introduce myself. I'm Aurora, the campaigns coordinator, and you'll be able to, I'll be your main point of contact for all of you campaigners, and my email will always be in the end of your action materials. So yeah, for the roundup this month, there have been quite a few things going on. In last month, as you know, we asked you to also raise awareness of TB and meet with your MP if you can. Carrie from Brighton was able to meet with Preet Jill, who's her MP, and she had a very successful meeting, and apparently Preet Jill was very on board with all of the asks that she brought. I also saw her with a few other campaigners, Preet Jill, at the lobby day. So we had last week, Monday, the hunger lobby day about the humanitarian crisis in the Horn of Africa. And a lot of people really wanted to come for that. Unfortunately, we could only bring along 5 volunteers. So we tried to bring some people that hadn't had this kind of experience before. And it was really cool. We had speakers like Vicky Ford and Andrew Mitchell and Preet Jill, like you said, and our volunteers were able to speak with Bambushara Lambos and Fleur Anderson. And it was quite a good day. Maybe we have Andrew here, and if someone else, yeah, I think and Mira, who were 2 of the volunteers that came on the lobby day. Do either of you maybe want to share a bit how the experience was for you to meet with MPs and the whole training beforehand as well?
Hi, sorry, we're just attaching the camera.
Oh, after
Sorry.
you. After you, yes.
Oh, sorry. Hi. Hi, can you guys hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. So
Right.
Mira from Brighton. Oh,
All right.
you got that. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I'll start first. So it was really cool because I've never been to one of those lobbying days before, and it was really interesting to like see like all the other campaigners and stuff like come and like lobby for like the same thing. Yeah, it was nice it was interesting to talk to like the MPs and hear like other MPs talk as well. I don't know what else to say. It was a cool experience. I enjoyed it. It was really fun. I'm hoping to go for more. Yeah.
You too, Alex. It was good.
Yeah, I agree with everything she said.
You want to add anything, Andrew?
Yeah, the actual training full of from the Action Aid Alliance. That was fantastic, and good preparation to see the MPs. They covered everything, and it was a real good experience to be with the team, and there was over 100 of us there, and not just results, and it was very engaging and a good day.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, you're right. We were over 100, there were over 100 volunteers from other organizations came together, from the One Campaign, Aid Alliance, Save the Children, UNICEF. So yeah, and we, in general, there were over 40 MP meetings. So that was really good. What other news? So we had also the groups from Edinburgh, I can never say it right, I'm sorry, and Lillingdale to join forces. So basically Scotland groups came together and went on a really cool and Ruthie traveled app as well. And you guys had a stand at a volunteering fair in Edinburgh University, right? And then afterwards a social event. So maybe Karen and Ricky, do you want to tell us a little bit how it was?
While you're off mute, you can talk.
Well, Karen and I cheated really because just like you, Aurora, we're struggling to get the pronunciation, local pronunciations, and also all of these brilliant people up in Edinburgh are well, they're some of them are new, but we're definitely new. And then there are one or two people, well, two or three people that have been up here a long time doing brilliant campaigning. So we went along, like ostensibly Karen and I now part of Results Edinburgh, but actually we were as keen to just kind of meet people as the students that turned up. So I think there were quite a few students that came along and kind of showed an interest and gave their names and numbers and so on. But as far as we're aware at this point, none of them has like formally joined Results. But it's been a bit of a forming and norming experience for Results Edinburgh and Linlithgow. So I think, you know, Karen and I have arrived, but also two or three other people are new at the same time. So yeah, it feels like we are forming or reforming or whatever the word would be. There's a bit of energy, which is quite nice. So we're hoping to meet twice a month. You know, this meeting would be one of them, and then we'd have another meeting and do things like letter writing workshops and so on. So we'll see where we can go.
That sounds really, really good. Yeah, so positive, and you guys bringing your energy wherever you move. And I think talk about letter writing workshops. We also had one of those for the London group. So this was last week, Monday. They organized the first kind of letter writing on introduction to advocacy / letter writing workshop on Zoom. And yeah, we had kind of an introduction from Richard, not Richard who's on this call, the other Richard, the group leader, who has works in the public affairs sector. So he brought kind of his knowledge in, and then we kind of wrote some stuff up together for MPs around TB. And the week before that, they had a meeting in person in central London, and which is going to repeat itself next week, next Monday. So quite a few things going on with London. They're reactivated very much. And yes, that's kind of all of the news and updates that we had on you guys on the network. The last little bit that I have is not so positive, which is a bit of sad news. Ruthie, our campaigns and communications officer. She'll be leaving results at the end of the month. And I mean, she's been with results for 2 years and a bit, and has attended every single conference call every Tuesday, every first Tuesday of the month. And so this is her last conference call. And we'll really miss her. Do you want to say a few last words, Ruthie?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you all for being such a wonderful group of people who have made this work such a pleasure. Like, it's always a highlight coming on these calls, meeting you, the recent trip to Edinburgh to do the stall. And yeah, it's just a pleasure working with you and supporting you, and has been for the last 2 years. So I'm really going to miss that. And hopefully I'll see you at some point in future calls and events. And yeah, just all the best with your amazing campaigning. Yeah, I think I will end there, but I look forward to seeing what you get up to. And if I'm still here for a month, so if you want to reach out to me, or yeah, anything, just, you've still got my email address, let me know, and hopefully I'll be catching up with some of you in the next month anyway. But yeah, that's all for me. I think I'm handing back to Naveed now.
Thank you, Aurora and Ruthie. So yeah, let's move on to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. We are incredibly fortunate, and I would say honoured, to be able to welcome Caroline Mburu to this call. I can see that she's on the call, so Caroline, welcome. Caroline joins us from Kenya and is a TB champion and advocate, working very closely with Stop TB Kenya and their network of TB champions. As a young TB survivor herself, she is passionate about creating awareness of TB, especially among young people, through various social media platforms. So that's my brief introduction to start off with. Caroline, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Thank you. I'll start a little bit by introducing myself. My name is Caroline Mburu from Kenya. I'm a university student, I'm a TB champion, and I work closely with Stop TB Kenya. I currently use social media platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter to create awareness, especially among the young people. I'll also go ahead to tell you a little bit about my story, my TB journey and my experience, share that a little bit with you. So I got infected with TB in my undergraduate, that is, I was in my third year of study, it was in 2020. It took me almost 3 months to get diagnosed with TB because I kept dismissing it as a normal cough, as most people do it today. So all I did was get over-the-counter medicine, you know, stay for a week, go get some coughing medicine, it's still good, go away, go back. So it went like that for about 3 months, just treating myself with some drugs. But again, after 3 months, I got more symptoms. I got more symptoms. At first, it was just coughing, persistent coughing that would not go away. But my second most notable symptom was pain in my joints. That is around my knee areas. There was so much pain. I remember just using cream to try and make it go away, but it won't go. And then I started getting the night sweats, and then there was general body weakness. And then I remember one time I was in line in the hospital and I literally fainted because I was so weak. I could not stand on my own, you know, just coughing. So this was like way past 3 months. So that's when I decided now to go again back to the hospital. And this time I was admitted. So I was admitted for like a week in the hospital. And then after a day or two, I was diagnosed with severe pneumonia. So I was like, finally, I know what is wrong with me. But of course, that was a misdiagnosis, diagnosed with severe pneumonia. I went home after being admitted for like a week. I went home, So they sent me home with like some pills, you know, to take for that 1 week, and I was sure I was going to get well. But then things just got worse. Okay, so after the week of taking the pills that had been given for severe pneumonia, I became even weaker. You know, the symptoms like came back stronger. This time I couldn't eat anything, just vomiting all the time. I lost a lot of weight. The night sweats were extreme. Literally every symptom was extreme, including coughing so much to the extent like you cannot construct a single sentence on your own. So I decided to go back to hospital, this time to a different hospital. And that is when, after several tests, the doctor told me that it was TB. So I was started on treatment right away. I did my TB treatment for 6 months. So I used to take like 4 pills a day for the whole 6 months. But even after starting my treatment, the symptoms did not like go away immediately. The coughing was still there for up to, I think, 3 months. The coughing didn't go away immediately. Also, the first month, I still couldn't eat. I was still vomiting, still losing a lot of weight, still on medication for the first month. So everything went, it started getting better around the 3rd or the 4th month of taking my pills. So, but the pain in my chest did not go away the entire 6 months of treatment. So I think the late detection, I coughed so much to the extent that my chest just had, I don't know, the pain just couldn't go away. So after 6 months of taking the TB medication, I had now to use painkillers for the pain in my chest to like completely go away. I remember going an extra 2 weeks because I was so afraid of stopping the TB. I just thought if I stop taking these, an extra 2 more weeks of the TB drugs, just to make sure that it was totally gone. Okay, so but after that, the TB, I went back to hospital. They took more tests, and the TB was like gone, could not be detected. So what drew me to advocacy is that it dawned on me there are other thousands of young people out there, not only in my country, but in other countries who are going through the same thing, you know, going through the same experience. Because for me, the entire time, the entire 3 months I was coughing, it never dawned on me that it could be TB. I never actually thought it could be TB the entire time. So when the doctor said it was TB, it came as a surprise to me, because like most young people, they think that TB is an older person's disease, which is not the case, because right now it's actually affecting people from the reproductive age. So a lot of young people still think it's an older person's disease, like I thought at that time. So I decided to tell my story. That was in 2020. It actually took me 2 years to start talking about TB. I reached out to the Stop TB in 2022. So this was 2 years later. So this has a lot to do with the stigma of TB. People rarely talk about it, rarely come out to talk about it. So I came out in 2022. That's when I started talking about my story. And I thought if I keep telling my story, especially to young people, then they have someone to relate with. And then they can say, if she got TB at that time, if she got cured, then TB is actually treatable and incurable. Like, it's not really that easy to get people to talk about it. But I think I really just needed to tell my story so that everyone can relate, so that they can know it's treatable, so that they can know it's curable, and they can actually go to health centers and access treatment.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm going to stop you there. That's amazing story, and it sounds exhausting. It really does. We're going to hear more about stigma and other issues around Europe. Are people hearing my voice echoing? I'm hearing an echo. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Anyway, thank you, Caroline, for sharing that initial story. We're going to come back to a lot of that, I'm sure, in the questions. I'm just reminded, as I often am, that this is about the human experience behind the statistics and behind the technical information which we often give about health issues. Every person suffering and hopefully surviving TB has their own unique experience and has to face those very tough challenges. And for me, hearing those stories really helps me understand on a more emotional level, I think why the fight against this disease matters. And so thank you very much for sharing that. Now, we're going to be doing the usual thing of moving to some pre-arranged questions before we open to the floor. I should just say, I think 1 or 2 people have joined us a bit more recently. The reason we've moved an hour ahead of our usual time is because Kenya is 3 hours ahead of us, so it's really, really late for Caroline. So we're especially grateful to her for joining us at this time. So let's go to the first question, which I think should be coming from Marcelo in Somerset. Marcelo, are you still with us? I saw you earlier.
Yes, I'm still here.
Hi, Marcelo. Go ahead.
Hi. Well, Caroline, thank you very much for that, for sharing your experience. As Naveed said, very emotional, all the hurdles and the difficulties you went through whilst, experiencing the disease. I sympathize with you, and I'm so pleased that you were able to start advocating because of what happened to you, and then how you could raise awareness about this disease. But back to what I've been told to do. This is for us to understand better and to have the right skills for us to help others on this topic. How does TB affect people's lives, especially the youth? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. So the thing with TB is that it weakens your body, weakens you emotionally, mostly because of the stigma. So about affecting your life is that you cannot go ahead with your life normally. It's like you cannot continue. I remember back in, when I was in school, I was supposed to go for my attachment, that is my internship, but I couldn't because at that time I was just coughing. I was so weak, I really could not go for my internship. So I just had to wait until I felt better so that I can go back to my schoolwork. So for other persons who are working, I feel like it's the same for them. They cannot go back to work. You cannot do things normally because your body is so weak. So that is how it affects like people's life. But mostly when it comes to young people, it has a lot to do with the stigma. You cannot talk to your friends freely about it, because I remember not telling any of my friends that I had TB because you're so afraid of being shunned. So it's like you live your life alone. You don't want everybody else to know about it. So basically it interferes with your normal life and with your everyday activities.
Thank you, Caroline. That's very clear. I think that leads us very nicely into our second question, which I think should be coming from London.
Yeah.
Have we got someone from London?
Yeah, the question is, it's Andrew from London. You partly answered already, but why is ending stigma and myths around TB so important?
Oh, so first of all, myths do not tell the truth about TB. They just false information about TB, and basically the myths are what leads to stigma. Because, for example, some of the myths is that TB is a death sentence. Once you have it, there's no way you're going to get cured. TB is every person that is infected with TB is infectious, which is not true. TB is a curse, all that. So the myths are the ones that actually lead to stigma, because if there's information out there that is, as long as you have TB, that you're infectious, then other people are going to not want to be close to you. They're going to shun you because they know if you are infectious, then I don't want to come close to you because I'm still going to get that TB. So if we dismantle the myths and get the facts and the correct information about TB, and people know what is correct, then the stigma is going to go down. Because if we, for example, clear the myth that everyone with TB is infectious, and we say that not everyone with TB is infectious as long as they are on treatment, then I am not going to be afraid to be around persons with TB because they are not infectious. So if we clear the myths, then there's a very high chance that we're going to do away with the stigma. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Andrew, for the question. I mean, I've been campaigning on TB for 7 years now, and I think there's some people on this call who've been campaigning on it for a lot longer than that. This is the first time I've really heard anyone talk about the role of the media in helping that stigma to be fostered. So that's really interesting, and perhaps we'll touch in on that a bit more later. Our third question, before we open it up to sort of general questions, is from Norwich, I think. Is there anyone from Norwich on the call? I think Mark said he might be a bit late. I don't know if there's anyone else from Norwich here. It appears not, but I know what their question would have been, so I'm going to ask it. Caroline, I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how and why you use social media to raise awareness of TB and share your messages. Could you give us a little bit of an insight into that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So on social media platforms, I usually use platforms like YouTube. I use TikTok a lot, and I also use Twitter. The reason why I decided to use these social media platforms is because most young people, almost every young person has an account in either of these platforms. So reaching them through social media is actually easier than trying to do, the physical, going physically. So using social media is so easy because they can get to you every time you can get to them. Every time, almost everyone is on TikTok right now. So if I go on TikTok and I find maybe a trending video, a trending song, and I just use it, instead of now using the song, I just use the TB information that I want to get out there. It is so easy, and so many of them are just going to come across it. So I decided to use social media platforms because most of these young persons are available here. It's so easy to reach them. Also Facebook and Instagram, almost every young person right now has a Facebook and Instagram account. And the impact has been really good because most of them are going to send messages directly to you. Someone has a question, they just got diagnosed with TB and they're really scared. They just want to ask you because you've already made it clear to them it's not that deadly, it's not that bad, and then they're just going to realize, oh, okay, then maybe TB is not as bad as I thought. If I go to a health center, if I get this symptom, these are the symptoms. If I go to a health center, I'm diagnosed with TB and get started on medication, then I'm going to be fine. So it's it doesn't make it so big. It actually helps to reduce it and make it everyone can understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really interesting to hear how your conversations on social media maybe sounds like help to reduce that stigma, maybe. Let's open it up and maybe delve into some of these topics a bit further. So thank you for your answers for those first questions. And can I ask everybody just to introduce yourself to Caroline before you ask your question? Alternatively, there's the Zoom chat box as always, and there's texting the question directly to me. And the number for that is 07906 662 571. That's 07906 662 571. So we'll pick up questions wherever they come, but let's start off by just getting anybody to have the chance to just open the microphones and ask your question. So who would like to kick off?
Well, Caroline, I'm Richard from London. Very good of you to come and talk to us. What can we do in the UK to help with this?
Thank you for the question. I think mostly what we need here is, being part of an organization that is, taking care or advocating for the rights of persons with TB is helping with creating awareness is really important. Getting everyone out there to know that TB is curable, TB is not a curse. Removing all the myths, that is, I think, very important, especially getting that information to young people. So because I believe like creating awareness is like the start of ending TB. You know, as long as everyone knows about the symptoms, everyone knows that they can go get treated, everyone knows it's curable, everyone knows if I don't go and get treated, I could be passing the disease to someone else, and when it's going to like increase the rate of infections. All that information out there is really going to help with, you know, reducing and ending TB.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you for the question, Richard. That's really kind of cutting to the chase there in terms of what we can do in the UK, because as you know from the materials, we've talked about what we can do in the run up to World TB Day. And I'm interested in this because we often ask our network to consider doing really specific campaigning asks, don't we? We go in on a specific issue, we ask a minister to do a particular thing. But this, to me, shows us that sometimes we actually need to do some awareness raising first, or as well as. And just as you described in Kenya, I think we have the same issue here in the UK, where people just don't understand enough about the disease. They think it's gone away, or you know, they have misapprehensions about it. So I'm really glad that we had that question. I can see that Vinny has got his hand up. Vinny was speaking to us last month, so I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Naveed. Nice to see you, everyone. Hi, Caroline. That was a fantastic introduction. I really appreciate you coming along and speaking to us tonight. So I actually work for Results. I'm the Senior Parliamentary Advocacy Advisor for TB. So I work quite closely with British parliamentarians on TB and try and get them to become more engaged with it and proffer solutions and finance to be able to support programs which will help eradicate TB. I think my question was it's slightly different. What was your experience of the kind of programs and organizations that are operating in Kenya who are working to eliminate TB? In the sense that, like, did you visit a Global Fund facility, or was it? Just a bit curious as to like the treatment, like where it came from. Who provided it, because I think it's really, really good to get that first bit. You know, we talk abstractly about things like the Global Fund and ODA, but it's really interesting to get like your perspective as someone that's actually engaged, you know, walked in the front door with a TB diagnosis. So yes, I'm curious as what your experience of that was like.
Oh, on working with organizations, I didn't really start working with the organization until I started selling my story. Because I got my treatment. My first treatment was actually from a public hospital where I got misdiagnosed. So my second treatment that actually diagnosed me with TB was a private hospital. So when I started telling my story, I reached out to Stop TB Kenya. That was via Facebook. And then I got engaged with the network of TB champions. So the network of TB champions actually do it physically, you know, going home to home, contact tracing, just doing it physically, going to hospitals, you know, educating people like in a physical location is what usually the network of TB champions do. So what we have is, since we have 47 counties in the country, so like each county we have TB champions, you know, working on the ground, giving information about TB. So, and then we have like a group where we do calls, give updates, like this county has had this number of infection with this within this time period. We need more focus or concentration on this county. So the network of TB champions is actually who is doing the groundwork, the organization that is actually doing the groundwork. And each county with the champions, they still have, you know, the small organization in that county that they're still working, you know, to do the contact tracing, taking care of those persons, taking care of their needs, and then bringing what they need now to the top organization now, which is the Stop TB Kenya.
Thank you, Caroline. That was really interesting. Thank you.
Can I follow up that? That's really interesting to hear that you are able to you have a system of contact tracing in Kenya for TB. Is that a really important part of the, as far as you're aware, is that a really important part against of the way of keeping the disease under control?
Yeah, it is actually very important. Contact tracing is very important because some of these people are not going to come to hospital to get TB treatment, mostly because of, the stigma I talked about. Because usually, first of all, the myth of TB being a curse is very common, especially in the rural areas. So most of these people will not come willingly. So sometimes the TB champions actually go to them. And then by the time, they get to them, some of these persons are really sick or have gotten really weak because they're not going to get treatment at the hospital. So the champions have to go to them and then tell them about the importance of, getting or starting treatment so that they do not spread the infections. And if they have been in contact with anyone else, family members, we also have to make sure that they are also tested just to make sure that the infection has not spread. So contact tracing and then, this physical connection, especially in the really rural areas, is really important.
Thank you, Caroline. I see one or two more people have joined, and it may be that you've joined at the normal time. We're nearly at the end of the call because we moved an hour early because our speaker Caroline has been with us and she's 3 hours ahead of us, and so it's very, very late in Kenya. So I'm afraid we're only going to have a few more minutes with her. So let's use that time really well. And any other questions that you have, just I haven't got anything on the text or the chat box, which is really unusual for us. But anyone, if you want to put something in the chat or ask us a question, just shout it out.
See if I can do a raise hand.
Karen and Ricky, go ahead.
Yeah, Karen's just finding out how to raise my hand. I could just do that, couldn't I?
You could have.
Caroline, thank you so much, Caroline, for your personal testimony. I was struck by how long it took for you to get a diagnosis. So you didn't realize for a long time that what you had was tuberculosis. And then even when you did, and you were in hospital, you had a misdiagnosis even then. So do you think that a swift diagnosis would be should be a high priority thing for a campaign? Or actually, is that not as important as some of the other things we ought to campaign for?
Yeah, I feel like misdiagnosis is very important for campaigning because, once you join you get to meet other people that have recovered from TB. You're still going to hear some of them saying that they were also misdiagnosed actually for longer period of time than I was. And then the thing with misdiagnosis is that you go back home believing you're okay, thinking you're going to be fine. So you don't actually get the need to go back to hospital. And then what is happening is you're getting worse, you're getting weaker. And then your system is still getting weak. And then another thing is with misdiagnosis is you still have the TB. It's not being treated, meaning that you are infectious. So it's highly that you're going to spread the TB to another person. So, the rate is still going to keep going up. So misdiagnosis in a campaign is very important because it's going to keep the rate of TB from going up as long as, you get to a hospital, get diagnosed TB and get on treatment immediately so that you do not keep, spreading the TB to other persons.
What causes doctors to misdiagnose, do you think?
Pardon?
What is it that causes doctors to misdiagnose, do you think? Why is it doctors? Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, I feel that, for example, in my case, maybe the doctor also thought that it couldn't have been TB because I was just saying it's coughing. And maybe also the doctors or health experts also need more information on TB, maybe more information. They're told that if these patients comes in and they have been coughing for more than a week or two, test them for TB. Don't just give them killers. Don't just give them over-the-counter medicine. Just test them for TB because it's better for it to be negative than to be positive and you still, you know, misdiagnosing them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricky. We've probably got time for one last question, if anyone wants to slip one in before we round up.
I'm going to be cheeky and take the last question unless anybody else. It's Ruthie, by the way. We're in the office, so it might look confusing. So thanks so much for coming, Caroline. We connected on Twitter because I saw Caroline's wonderful TikTok videos and Twitter posts. So obviously that's one impact of social media and raising awareness and getting connections. But I was wondering what the other reactions to your social media posts have been, and if you've seen any younger people kind of reach out, or if you know what the impacts of your posts have been, apart from coming and speaking to us, which we're very grateful for.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Like I mentioned earlier, I get a lot of direct messages from young persons who want to know, not mostly them getting infected with TB. Some of them have persons that they are taking care of that have been infected by TB, maybe family members or friends, and then they want to know, should I do this with them? How should I take care of them? So I get those messages. Others just come out telling me, I also had TB in school. I just got diagnosed with TB. How do I go about this? How do I not go about this? So I get a lot of messages. Just that sometimes they just don't want to come out and talk about it, because, like I said, it's not everyone that is going to come out and talk about their TB stories. Because sometimes when you ask them, do you want to come out and talk about it, they say no. They just wanted to know certain information just in the direct messages. So even though some of them will not communicate or comment publicly, they're just going to send the direct messages. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm going to call it a day there. For anyone who was wrong-footed by the change of time of this call, it was because Kenya is 3 hours ahead of us. So it's now 11 o'clock at night for Caroline. So we are incredibly grateful to her for joining us and spending this time with us. Just a massive thank you for sharing your understanding and your experience of TB advocacy. It's really, really powerful for us. And I hope that we can use that to motivate us to take action. I hope it's inspired people on this call to do whatever you can in your advocacy. And I want to say a big thank you to you all in advance for anything you can do in the run up to World TB Day, whether it's meeting your MP, writing something for social media if you've been inspired by something about that, or simply sharing stories and information about TB with your family and friends. As we've talked about, it's quite an unrecognized disease in spite of being so prevalent. We are just about to post, and there we are, post information on our so that is the link to our action sheet. And also we've got a link directly to a sheet about how what you can ask MPs to do. So we're asking people to meet their MP ideally and build that relationship. But we've got a few things that MPs can do, and the information will be added to over the course of the next few weeks as we find out about more. So one is a debate in Parliament. There is asking a question of the Minister. There is a roundtable event I think they can go to. So all the details are in that link there. So just want to say again, thank you. And before we go, a reminder that the next Grassroots conference call will be on Tuesday, the 4th of April, this time back at the usual time of 8 p.m. So thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evenings.